welcome all to KDOW 820 here live in the Bay Area. We have a wonderful show here for you today with Emmy Award-winning host Kim McNicholas and Dr. John Phillips. Let's get this show started correctly. Let's get this show started right. Oh, it looks like we have to do the intro in, well, now.
Sponsored by The Way to My Heart Incorporated.
Welcome to the Heart of Innovation, 60 minutes that could save life and limb with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by Patient Advocacy Group, the Global PAD Association at padhealth.org, in partnership with Reflow Medical, the pulse of medical ingenuity. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of the Global PAD Association, Kim McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of Save My Piggies Health and Wellness, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm really excited about this episode because we have someone who is truly near and dear to my heart. We have Alexa Calingo, who is here with us to talk about a major gap still in our healthcare system, something called empathy. And she is going to share her personal experience with her dad, who had a terrible experience inside the healthcare system in his final days, and Alexa Calingo's call for an increase in empathy in our healthcare system based on their experience. She currently is with the American College of Healthcare Executives that's based in Chicago, and that's where she plays a pivotal role in actually shaping healthcare executives' careers through curating education programs that promote sustainability, best practices, and highlight that all leaders have something to share. And we're going to find out how she is, incorporating her experience with her own family members into her practice with the American College of Healthcare Executives, coming up in just a moment. But first, Dr. John Phillips, my co-host, is here, someone who is self-proclaimed, empathetic because of his experience, being a part of this show. In fact, the past 2 years.
Welcome everybody. You've heard me say that many times.
Yes, many times.
It's not lost on me when you hear a patient speak about their healthcare journey, the road that they take, and how oftentimes they're kind of, you felt like they're a number on an assembly line, or I hate it when we call them customers or consumers, but we're often doing that. We know healthcare is a business, I get that, but we can still be empathetic. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what Alexa went through and how that stimulated her to make a difference. But again, appreciate the opportunity to be here. And it's always important to walk a mile in someone else's shoes.
It really is. And Alexa is also someone I've known for a very, very long time. I hope she doesn't mind me saying this. I mentor young women between the ages of 13 now to 27 through the Miss America program. I use my talents as a journalist and professional interviewer to train these young women in interview skills, help them develop the confidence and eloquence in speaking their opinion on a variety of different topics, and really helping them to become the voice that they need to be in order to create the change that they want to see. And Alexa really is one of those young women that has really blown my mind. And watching her over the year that we worked with her, seeing her grow then and then seeing who she is today, I mean, it just goes to show that our program, really works. We have young women in this program that care about their community, care about creating the change they want to see. And Alexa is definitely one of them. And one of the things I think is so important about the program, this program in particular, is we teach these young women not just simply to spout facts to support their opinion, but to share their own experiences and to shape their opinions through their experiences. And that's why I thought it was really important for Alexa to come forward to share her personal experience with her dad and share how that's shaping her perspective and her practices through the American College of Cardiology.
100%. And it's through shared experiences that people can bridge the gap of differences that they have. I mean, we're finally done with this election season, and we're not going to get political here, but it's over. And now we have to have I think, a civil discourse. And so it's all about, in my mind, finding a common ground that you can talk to somebody about who may have a different opinion than you, whether it's political, whatever. And then you can listen. Being empathetic is about listening, but it's also just understanding, where that person is coming from. But Kim, I've got to ask a favor. Okay. So you may notice that I'm starting to look a little homeless here. I'm growing it's No Shave November, right? So November is Men's Health Month, Health Awareness Month, okay? And so in my clinic in Ohio, there's 3 guys that work there, and I'm one of them. And so we are growing. We're not shaving our faces for the whole month. And so what we're doing, and this is where I need your help. So what we're doing is that people that come in for a service, they get $40 off the service, and half of that money is going to go towards a cancer of their choice. So I'm picking prostate cancer if I win, if I have the best looking beard. But what I'm going to do is that whatever that money is, so that half that money goes towards prostate cancer. I'm going to take whatever that is, and I'm going to donate it, if I win, to a PAD cause. So it might be the Heart of Innovation, whatever. You're going to help me pick it if I win. So I need folks to help me here, and we need votes on Instagram and Facebook. Yes, we need votes on Instagram and Facebook for Game Day Men's Health Grandview Heights. So I need you to help me get this, because half of what we generate this month will go towards prostate cancer if I win, and then I'm also going to use that money myself. I'm going to donate it to a PAD cause. So if I have to win, though, so despite how homeless I'm starting to look, you guys got to help me.
Well, we are, we work with cancer of the legs. That's what it's considered. So that fits as well. But make sure Joshua, our YouTube producer, is standing by, and he is probably going like this. He's rubbing his hands together saying, hey, put the link in the chat so he can put it up on YouTube. So get that link during the commercial break and stick it up there so that everyone can save it and start, I don't know, liking your channel. Is there a particular post they need to like?
Yeah, so it's on Instagram and Facebook. So I'll figure out how to, me, I'm not the most savvy person for social media, but I will figure out how to get people to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and then they can vote as the month progresses and how disheveled I look. But it's for a great cause. It's for a great cause.
I love it. And, it also shows empathy for patients in doing something like this, that you really, truly care, that it's beyond a profession. It's truly a passion that you're carrying into your own personal life. And I think that that's amazing. One thing that we also want to call upon, I think this is something that's important for those for November. And last year we put a call out there. While men were actually doing the mustache and the beard, we encouraged women with PAD to literally let the hair on their legs grow, because as you know, when you have PAD, it's really tough to grow that hair on your legs when you have low blood circulation. So let's celebrate for women for November, the hair on our legs, and let's let it grow.
I like that.
And on that note,
yes.
I think let's go to break, because I think our guest, Alexa Calingo, is not sure what to do with us right now. So let's go to break and come back in just a moment.
Love it.
Leg health can indicate.
Where the heck did we go with this story? Jeez Louise.
That is what makes it so fun, honestly. That's what makes it so fun.
Kim, I didn't know where you were going with that at first. I was like, where is our hair going to grow? Oh.
Well, but you're exactly right, because I have had patients who will be a little embarrassed, like when we're examining them, like, oh, I didn't shave my legs. And I said, that's fine, but it's actually a good sign that you have hair down, at the level of the ankle and the toes, because the first thing to go with arterial occlusive disease is the hair.
Yep. And that's so we joke about it. People post in our group. I'm like, they're like, yeah, I'm growing hair. I'm like, keep it growing, especially during the winter. I mean, you cover your legs anyway, so let it grow instead of let it snow, let it grow, let it grow.
100%.
Okay, so we need to kick off this thing. I promise, Alexa, we invited you for a reason.
I trust you on that.
I promise you. I'm not sure if you can compete with hair growth on the mouth and the legs, but I'm just kidding. But we're going to start off this next session with moment of inspiration, in case that was not 10 minutes of full-on inspiration. So Colin, can you kick things off as soon as you start with the moment of inspiration, and then we'll go into Alex.
We'll do just that. Also, 15 seconds till we air.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Dr. John Phillips, spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
So we're talking empathy, and I said, hold up ChatGPT, find me a quote about empathy from a U.S. president, because we just had our presidential elections. So I have this quote from Barack Obama, and I think this sums it up very nicely about empathy. So he's quoted as saying, "Learning to stand in somebody else's shoes, to see through their eyes, that's how peace begins. And it's up to you to make that happen. Empathy is a quality of character that can change the world." Mic drop.
I think, I think that point taken, enough said. Great way to bring in Alexa Calingo. She is going to be sharing her experience with us. She is currently with the American College of Healthcare Executives, that's based in Chicago. But we are first going to introduce and say hello to Alexa. And before we get into what you do, I want to talk about who you are and your experience that shaped your views on empathy in healthcare. So welcome, Alex. I can call you Alex.
Yes, you can call me Alex.
So let's go back a little bit in your journey. Have you always been in healthcare? And even when you had your experience with your father, and we're going to get into that story in a moment, were you in healthcare when you had that experience, and maybe you were shocked by the experience you had because you're like, this is not what healthcare is supposed to be about?
So at the time, it was a tough experience, because I kind of boomeranged and am now healthcare adjacent, I would say. So you know me from my previous life, where I was in medical school, and unfortunately I did have to stop that journey, but I did pursue my MBA in healthcare management, and I stopped it because of financial issues. But it's okay, because I found myself using the skills that I did learn in medical school to understand working jobs where I used my healthcare MBA. So at the time, I was working with health tech startups. So I was still in the healthcare industry a bit. And when my dad went what he went through, so to a too long didn't read version, my dad fell ill with COVID in 2021. And he was already immunocompromised because he had had a kidney transplant in 2018. So he had to be very careful. And it was just one of those situations. And I also understand from the hospital perspective that they were already burnt out with the pandemic that was going on. People were underworked or overworked, understaffed. And so I do think of it in that lens of like, I know that they were tired, but with my family's experience, and I know it's not anything special or unique, it just felt that physicians are taught to really take care of their patients and serve their patients. And it was in a moment like this where the physician just said, "It doesn't look good," looked at us, shrugged, and walked out of the room. And my family was just like, okay.
Yeah. What does that mean? What
Yeah,
do we
so
do
and
with
she
this
like they
information?
had left without letting us ask questions or asking if we had any questions. And so it was a weird experience because like as someone who had previously in med school, you're always taught to communicate with your patients, ask them if they don't understand, explain it in a certain way to help them understand what's going on. And so to have that physician just not answer our questions, leave us uncertain of what was going to happen wasn't a great experience. But I will say I am very happy that there was another attending physician who kind of saw what had happened. And this physician actually took the time, gave me his cell phone number, like said, let me know if you have any questions. He would text me updates and how kind of make it, and he would text it in a way that I could explain it to my mom and my siblings and my aunts and uncles so they could understand, not just using medical terminology. So it was nice that there was someone else helping in that situation, but the initial like doesn't look good kind of really angered me because I know that's not what but that's not what physicians or anyone in the healthcare world should be taught when not handling, but when working with patients and their families.
It's interesting the way you're making it sound is that that was just one quick moment in time, one physician and another one came in, riding on a white horse. But obviously, that really wasn't necessarily the case because it's something that is carried with you
Mhm.
now years down the road, where I happen to see you post on LinkedIn that this was something that really has impacted you and your family to the point that you're speaking out publicly about it.
Yes. And I think because it just boils down to people need to be empathetic. And something I think about often is when you're in school, like even in grade school, you learn subjects like math, science, reading, writing, and then you eventually enter the workforce where you write your resume, things like that, and you look at job descriptions. And when you see job descriptions and they list qualifications, they list like experience with programming tools. They look to see if you've led teams for X many years. And I say those qualifications are very valuable and very valid, but sometimes they don't look, I feel like a lot of the time they don't focus on the humanistic side of things, whereas like, are you someone who is empathetic? Because a lot of the times, for roles in healthcare and also in other industries, to be empathetic or to be a good leader or even to be a good teammate, you need to know how to communicate with your team. And one of the things that stems from that is having empathy. And so that's where I think a lot of it gets lost in the mix.
Yeah, and I would add to that in the sense that there's obviously intelligence, book smarts, problem solving, logic, whatever, but there's emotional intelligence too. And we talk about the EIQ or whatever it is, and those people actually, in my opinion, tend to do even better in the medical profession than those that are just straight up wicked smart, because you can't really teach that. And
No.
and obviously people gravitate towards, patient-centered careers in medicine or not. But I mean, we've all been around people that just they do not understand the situation. And I've seen it before and it's embarrassing because I've been on the other side of it like you, and it's really frustrating and sad.
It is. Yeah.
Well, kind of next, right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to have more on empathy in healthcare. So don't go away.
3 years ago, my symptoms started with.
Yay. That's so interesting. I want to share, my experience with my mom, and I could put it out there that John, the story with my mom, and we went through 5 doctors, and I always say that if they would have actually taken a moment to touch the patient, my mom's life might have been, well,
I mean,
I really believe
I
would have
had-
been saved.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that the patient will tell you what's wrong with them if you listen to them long enough. But I'll be honest with you, like with what I do, the heart catheterization, okay? It is easier for people to order a heart catheterization than it is to take the time to sit down and figure out what's going on and should we do it, shouldn't we do it? And I'm as guilty as the next person because there is, and obviously COVID was bad and people got burned out, but you always have to at least walk a mile in that patient's shoes, that family's shoes, and imagine, or at least I try to, like, if this was my mom, how would I treat this person? And it changes the way you interact with people. Takes a little bit longer. And, I live in a glass house, so I shouldn't throw stones, and I've been guilty of it. But this topic and this show is a great reminder of what it boils down to. We're all compassionate people that get into medicine, and don't forget that.
Yep. I mean, that's why you get into it in the first place. I mean, the kind of some of the fun with the surgical procedures and things that you can do, and the miracles that you can offer, you learn along the way, but you get into the medical business because you really want to help people. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's millions of other ways to make money. It's interesting. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal not too long ago, and this is a fact that we're running into, and we should talk about it on the air. But if you look at like the 3 top things that outgoing fellows, residents who are going to become attendings look for in a job, and I'm not disagreeing, a ton, but it's like work-life balance. So really having that, a lot of people want that shift work and they want to kind of do their work and then leave, pagers off, cell phones off, and just do. Whereas the physicians of old, it was in this article where the physicians of old are kind of lamenting this attitude, like, no, wait a second, you've got a patient that you've took care of, they're still in the hospital. You should be around or at least available to help them. But it's a huge divide, I think, and it's just going to get worse.
It is, and I think that's actually really good. And Alexa, you can actually probably contribute to this conversation because that's where you are. You're training, healthcare executives and things
All right,
like
everyone.
that.
Sorry to interrupt. Heads up, 7-Up. We got 10 seconds
Ruins our
left before we're
conversation.
live.
Every time, Colin.
What can I say? It's my job. I don't mean it. I'm sorry.
I love you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful fall Saturday in Columbus, Ohio, and on the West Coast. So, Alexa, I want to dive into this. Why empathy? Like, what is why is your focus on empathy as opposed to, again, it's the American Association of Healthcare Executives, or I may have not gotten the term right, but like, there's so much more to medicine than being empathetic, and it's a business. But and I know the experience that you had with your family and your dad kind of carved that for you, but can you just share a little bit with me, like, why empathy?
Of course. So we learn that empathy is considered a soft skill, or one of those soft skills that's not really taught in school or as a subject in school. But when you look at it as a whole, I'd like to see that empathy is pretty complex, because practicing it, you need to be actively listening to your team, people around you, without judging. So you are there, you're all ears, listening and figuring out, like, reading between the lines, like what they're saying, but also kind of figuring out what are they really saying, And that also includes, with being empathetic, you need to be observing those nonverbal cues, I mean. So how is their body language? Are they standing off like this while they're explaining something to you? Are they tapping because they don't want to be there or something? And another thing with being empathetic, like, you are just really regulating your own thoughts and emotions as you're listening to someone else. And so for something that's a soft skill, I feel like those are so many steps that you really need to take in consideration when you're like a healthcare executive or a healthcare leader. And so does that I can go on and on and on, but
No, no,
I think
I like, but
those are
can
some of
you,
those top things to think about.
can
So
you take, let's say I am the most unempathetic person out there. Can you teach me how to be empathetic?
it was not going to be one of those 45-minute conversations because it does take time because I recognize also based on my experience growing up, people have always like teachers have always told me, you're so empathetic, you're so empathetic. And I used to always ask, what does that mean? Because I didn't quite understand. But so empathy maybe is a learned type of behavior, I would say. And you can definitely work on it. And there's some things that like I have taught some of the people that I work with how they can strengthen their empathetic skills. One is just really one simple way actually is something that I always start with is telling them to read fiction. Because when you're, of course, you're around like news articles, journal articles all the time. Those are all based on facts. But when you're reading fiction, you're entering a character's, like you're entering their thoughts and their feelings. So you're trying to learn something from a different point of view that's not your own. So I feel like that's an easy starting point is telling them to read something that's like non-medical, something fiction, read a young adult novel or something, read The Hunger Games, read like Harry Potter or something that's something totally fiction.
That's interesting because you would think that, logic would lead you to say, why don't you read the story of one of your patients? But I see where you're coming from in that if I'm someone in medical, I can't help but put my medical hat on when I'm reading that and still see patients in the same way that I saw them before. So actually going into a fictional realm gives you the better chance of, putting down the walls and that
Yes.
resistance that you didn't even know existed and enter into this new realm with a different hat. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That really does. What do
Yeah.
you think, Dr. John?
I think yeah, I think that actually, I think there's a new show on TV. I haven't seen it, but it's a medical based show where a physician can somehow get in the head of his patients
Oh, I
and
saw
kind of
that.
see it through their lens. But you have to be like, so there are examples, many examples that I've had where we are going to see a patient in consultation and they have a disease that has not been told to them. And we bring it up to the forefront for the first time when the other physicians that are taking care of them probably should have done this, but they haven't. That is one opportunity where we don't communicate well enough in the healthcare profession based on someone in the hospital, subspecialties, things of that nature, where empathy definitely needs to be highlighted. So on that note, we've got to go to break. Stay with us. You don't want to go, you don't want to miss this. Colin, how am I doing?
You're doing spectacular.
It's awesome. I didn't want to interrupt you, Dr. John. So I love that you just get it. I mean, you could always say, end and I'll take it. But I thought you did great. I like when you do your funny tosses. It's great.
That's
Um,
that's my attempt to get one inch, 1 millimeter closer to that Emmy. That Emmy.
and we have interesting. I don't know if Marcia wants to jump on and I think that it's interesting because I think that the experiences, there's always one experience when I'm talking to doctors that are truly empathetic. There is one experience that just literally knocked them out of that myopic track. And they started developing empathy from there on out because of one particular instance. There's for those doctors that really like yourself that have this empathy for patients and have this amazing innate sense to connect and communicate with these patients, there's always that one story, one patient, like Craig Walker. He's a cardiologist out of Louisiana. He shares this patient that was brushed off, and she comes in there and it's like, hey, they want to take my legs. You want to give me one more chance, doc? I want to dance. So he's like, okay, well, if you're going to lose your legs anyway, I'm going to give it a chance. And 6 months later, she comes back after he opened up her legs and she starts dancing and she's like this. And so he got video of her dancing and he's like, that's the one patient I always go back to. And every single time I talk to a patient and I'm thinking no hope, I'm going to give them one more chance. I'm going to just do one more. And she is a good example of that. So anyway, so there is that one patient, right, that helps you to develop that empathy. And I'm sure you probably have one in the back of your mind now.
But to Alexa's point, it doesn't happen overnight. Like it is learned, because to listen to somebody, actually to actively listen to somebody takes, like, you got to fire up the neurons here.
Yeah.
And then to try to not judge somebody. I mean, we all have biases and I get that, but you have to kind of just remember when I remember it hit me, and I think I shared this, the whole blood. Remember when I discussed the touching the patient's blood and whatnot, and just kind of like, for me, it was just, okay, we're all kind of the same. We're made of the same parts. We've got the same blood kind of coursing through us. The iron that's in your blood, you can trace it back to the Big Bang, which is crazy, like billions of years ago. And so we're all kind of on this, circle, this sphere together. But I mean, that kind of hit me, where everybody's insides are pretty much the same. And so you just got to put those biases away. But it takes time and effort to not judge and to actively listen. And again, that's why doing this show is so important to somebody like me.
And me too. But it's also something that I'm learning. Is it possible to become, I keep being told over and over again, by Dr. Anada Dewal and Dr. Lorenzo Petrone just told me, and Dr. David Alpert just told me, sometimes I can be too empathetic. And I get too immersed into the patient's story to the point where sometimes I just need to draw the line, where you have a patient. And in the past few days, I've had several patients where everyone's saying, you know what, you gotta know when to say when. And you can have as much empathy in the world and you can keep fighting for them. But if they're not willing to stand up and fight for themselves and create the change they want to see, you can't kick yourself. You can't let it impact you, because empathy can lead to a complete degradation of your whole self and actually work against you, which I've been sent down a rabbit hole and in a downward spiral because of some of these situations where, for example, yesterday, a patient literally has made the choice to get a toe amputated, and truly, despite what I've told her that there's another option out there, has decided that she has the best care, and it's really just not wanting to go the extra mile. So she's made herself believe that there's nothing else that can be done and would rather sacrifice the toe than drive an hour to go to a doctor that could save the foot, and save the toe. And this toe, which she doesn't realize, this toe is going to be amputated. But John, as you know, they stopped at the ankle and told her they couldn't get any further. So when this amputation of the toe occurs, it's going to be the foot and it's going to be the below the knee. Like, that's just the way it goes. We see it all the time. And so, I mean, at this point, you might as well, if you're not going to go anywhere, you might as well just get her done and just go south. But it kills me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lead the horse to water. And Alexa, I'm curious though, and I'd like to talk about this in our next segment if you found it appropriate. But healthcare executives, they have a hat that says, "How do we make money for this health system and this hospital?" And therefore, it's volume, volume, volume. I'm curious how you get them to think differently.
Yeah. That's a challenging one.
Truly put their. I mean, they can talk the talk, but if you walk that walk, that's a little bit challenging.
It is challenging.
And what about Alex, look at Marcia. I don't know if Marcia wants to jump in when we start to actually say this, but I think that might be an interesting idea. Whatever hospice nurses are taught should be required of all healthcare personnel.
Yeah. I saw you drop that in the chat.
What was
Are they
that?
taught something, or do they learn it like the first 2 days on the job? When they see death and it's, full.
Yeah, are they taught that at all?
Well, so I don't know, but I can tell you that it's important to lean on resources such as hospice or palliative care, because they can help. I remember I was listening to a talk by one of our palliative care.
Sometimes I feel like the villain. We got 5 seconds till we air.
I knew that was coming.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
It's hard to believe that we only have 2 segments left because we're having such a vibrant conversation, and thankfully we're on YouTube because people, you're missing, those on the radio are missing out on the conversation we're having between or during the breaks, I should say. But Alexa, so walk me through, if you could, how you take a group of healthcare executives who, let's be honest, they've got spreadsheets and bottom lines and capital requests, and it's a business. How do you get them to think a little bit differently, maybe, and say, well, it's not always about the volume and the throughput. It's providing the best care and doing what we can for our fellow humans.
Yes, I know this is a tough one because a lot of the times healthcare executives are always only thinking about volume, though they might claim to be patient-centered care. And so something to think about from an outsider perspective is when you're looking for a hospital system or a hospital to take your family to or to go to, what do? You look them up online. You look at the reviews. So if a hospital is like all about volume, but they have not so great reviews, like I tell them no one's really want to go to you because people trust what other patients are experiencing and what they put online. Some other tips, I know, John, you had mentioned it, is to really look at palliative care and like hospice care too, because those are the end of life care facilities and those people deal with some of the hardest things to do. So healthcare executives should take time to like shadow or talk to those care facility individuals who work at those care facilities. And something else that I also offer to healthcare executives is to shadow their physicians, like shadow them for a day, because oftentimes they're at the top and they don't know what's going on the floor. And they might be like, oh, I'm too busy to do that. Well, what do you think about the physicians and nurses who are doing that? So you really need to show that continuum of care, like in that leadership role.
How does lack of empathy materialize or reveal its ugly head? When it from the top, there's no empathy coming down from administration, down to the physicians, down to the clinicians, and then ultimately the negative impact on the patients.
Mm-hmm. I think, and lack of empathy can be seen in so many different ways, but one major way that is highly known is through burnout. And so burnout can definitely be characterized in various methods, whether it's like you are having extreme depersonalization, you have no motivation, you just have low self-accomplishment, you're emotionally exhausted. And emotionally exhausted is when you're at the point where you have no empathy. Like maybe that's the point where the first physician in my case was just like, okay, it looks bad. So that's where you are at that lack of empathy. And we're trying to avoid that from happening for any other healthcare executive or anyone who works in the healthcare setting.
It's interesting that you see it as it really does come down to the top from the top. And we do have Sam in our live studio audience who is rightly saying compassion fatigue is a real thing. And that's
Well,
a
yeah,
really big
and
concern.
as Alexa commented, when her father was sick during COVID, I mean, that's when the light of burnout really shone through. And I feel bad for the critical care, the frontline people that were taking care of these patients. Because, I mean, at times you're deciding, okay, I've got 3 people that need to be vented on mechanical. They need, to have someone breathe or a machine breathe for them. And I only have 2 machines. I mean, like that. I mean, I don't even know how you tackle that, but it's led to people leaving ICU care. I mean, I know nurses that it was too much for them and they left. And that's a problem too, Alexa. I would imagine we've talked about this on the show. Staffing is a problem. People and nurses and ancillary staff a lot of them would rather work in an outpatient setting than inpatient. It's less stress. It's less you don't have to have that empathetic hat on all the time like you do in someone in an ICU that's really sick and potentially, dying.
And I think, how much of a role does appreciation and understanding actually lead to empathy?
I feel I don't like I feel weird about using the word appreciation because I'm also stuck on you see those memes online of how the frontliners they're appreciated with a pizza party and they're like, we don't want this. So
I see what you mean. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
appreciation, but appreciation is very different, right? If
Yes,
you're truly empathetic, appreciation would look a lot different. I think
exactly.
that's probably a better way to put it. So
Yeah.
how would it look?
So appreciation and like in terms of empathy is like understanding where they're going through. Like if you see that I'm just drawing an example. If you see that you're as a healthcare executive, you see that your physician and the physician's team is struggling, you need to figure out, do we have resources to hire more nurses? Do we have resources to create more breaks? So it's about breaking up the workday in one sense, but it's really going back to the drawing board and seeing like, where can we make things better so that my team is better, so that my team will be serving their patients better, and so that the patients' families won't be stressed as much. And so they will also feel better in the situation.
But what about even getting to the level where you have Dr. John here that goes to his administrator because there might be certain rules at the hospital that says you can or cannot do this. And he has a patient that's sitting in front of him that he knows so well. And he says, oh my gosh, I know I can save this person. I know it's not standard. I know it's going to take, an extra half hour in the cath lab. Please let me do this. And here's this, little number cruncher over here that's going, I don't think so. I mean, it needs to really get to that level because you have someone like Dr. John who is empathetic and he's not able to express that to his patient because of the number cruncher over here. Is there any way around that? Do you tell the executives to say, hey, you can, take a step back and allow them
This is
to
the
make the
evil
decision
producer
for their
here. We
patient?
must cut for commercials. I see, she has her hands up, guys. I'm sorry. I must do what my job tells me to do. We will be back, though, to answer these questions more here on 8M 1220 KDOW. Please don't go anywhere. It's so exciting.
I have empathy for you. Empathy.
That's right.
Lots of compassion for Colin.
That's such a sticky situation.
Thank you, Colin.
Yeah. No, that really
I
is
have a true deep appreciation for him.
It is,
And
Alexa,
respect and
that is,
trust.
it is a sticky situation. We don't run into, there's obviously someone comes in and they're an extremist and we do what we can. We'll do everything we can to help them. But there are,
Yeah.
they watch your numbers and how much how much cost per case and things like that. And
I'm thinking about my mom. So my mom's still here, thank goodness, but she had a emergency surgery in December, and at first they told her she would be recovering in the hospital for up to she had a laminectomy, a cervical laminectomy. And so they said she would be recovering like 4 to 5 days in the hospital. But after 3 days, they're like, okay, we're sending you home. And so I know it was an insurance situation, but I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
if that's appropriate to say.
My one of my so what often and again, this is just my opinion, but what will happen is the smaller community hospitals on the weekend where they don't have the services that can, they often run like banks, honestly. And a Friday night when all these transfers come in from other St. Elsewhere's because they a lot of times they just want to get rid of these patients who are kind of draining. They're taking up a bed. They're not really. And one of my attendings used to say that. I shouldn't laugh, but it's like, why is this person coming in here? And he would say, well, they must have a negative wallet biopsy. So meaning like just their insurance is out or no money, and they're coming into one of the universities where you take everybody, and it's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
It's sad. But what we fight is right now, and I don't know if John has it as much as, let's say, some of the office-based labs, but there are a lot of doctors that are fighting right now for just trying to get a patient the approval for a procedure. And we're seeing the denials and delays all the time. And it's because the insurance companies, I think it starts even with the insurance companies that are sitting there number crunching. And you can't say social healthcare is any better because they do even more number crunching than the folks here. And we see the denies and delays on both ends of the stick. There's no empathy in these numbers at all. It's not built into the system, in either system, social healthcare or this insurance-based healthcare. And I don't know how you change that.
Part of it's our fault too. We do too many procedures, and I wouldn't say unnecessary, but procedures that you could put off. And that's at least in
What's going on, my favorite people? We
do.
got about 15 seconds till we air. Kim and John, when we hear the music for the last bit for this section, know that you got 30 seconds before the outro hits.
Okay. That's a good point, Dr. John. Want you to say it.
KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
So, Alexa, I want to get your thoughts on this. During the break, we were discussing, at least in what I do, some of the procedures are, you have to submit through insurance and they're getting denied because for one reason or another. And I think part of it is that we maybe are over extending ourselves and doing too many of these. But from like in your experience, if you are talking to executives that are watching the numbers and trying to figure out, okay, how do we be empathetic but yet maintain our volume? It's a yin and a yang. What are some tips that you help them with to tackle that problem?
And I mentioned it is it's a sticky situation because like you said, you want to be able to help this patient, you want to be able to create assurance for their family, but you're worried about insurance, you're worried about hospital volume, and that's just something that it's really situational based. And I know that's such a crummy answer to have because every hospital system does run a little bit differently. They might have like general problems or general similarities, but like that's just a problem that I haven't solved. And if I solved it, man, like everything would be running smoothly, but I'm not there yet. So I actually don't have much to share with that. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then. What problem, like when you started this, that you felt, oh, I'm not going to be able to solve this or at least crack into it? Do you think that you've kind of cracked into help the healthcare system?
I feel that I'd like to think that I have helped people understand the significance of like being empathetic or the significance of steps towards empathy. So when situations, for instance, when patients pass away in a hospital system, I do encourage the hospitalists and the physicians to speak with the patients' families to understand, or just so that they know that like this thing that happened, it sucks, but like, is there anything that they could have done better to help before the passing? And so just little steps, I feel like they're little, but they're actually quite big. And they take a lot of guts to do, I would say.
Oh, I totally agree. You know, when my mom passed 2 weeks before, we were in with the cardiologist. He didn't even touch my mom, sat in his chair, didn't bother to really listen to her symptoms. And if he would have listened and just taken a stethoscope and put it on her abdomen where she was complaining, he might have discovered she had this aortic dissection. And after my mom died, I couldn't help but have this anxiety and this anger and everything towards him, and thinking, well, do I put a lawsuit? Do I file a complaint?
Yeah.
You know what? He actually ended up going ahead and I'm going to remove this person from sorry, we had a little invasion in our system and I had to remove someone from our live feed here. So sorry about that. So I ended up with a phone call from this doctor who actually apologized. He said, I wish I would have touched the patient. I wish I would have listened. Your mom might be alive today. And that meant the world to me. The compassion, the empathy is so important in healthcare. And Alexa Calingo, thank you so much for leading the charge and sharing your story and helping to inspire others to be more empathetic in care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. I don't know who this person was. I had messaged Joshua to let him know that this guy was going to do something, and he did. He started to do it. So I had to jump in and
now you have to tell what was this person going to do?
No, this person was probably going to do start causing issues. He started to hear him. Did you start to hear him?
Yeah.
I
I
heard
started.
something, but-
And so that's why when people come in, it's like you got to jump on them right away. If they look weird, you got to, jump on him, because he was going to do something. It had this weird, it was the same issue we had with right before the guy shared his screen and exposed his genitalia
geez.
during I'm not kidding. It was
Oh,
with
that's right.
Mary Yost. You were
Yes.
there.
No, I was actually.
Oh, you came in afterwards.
No, I think that was the.
It was
that was
the African American.
Yeah, the African American. I think I was on. I couldn't see it. Yeah, but yeah, it's crazy. No, but getting back to your point, real quick. If you apologize, so it puts you as a physician, you can become very vulnerable if you apologize or admit, because no one wants to admit that they did anything wrong. But I know I've read that if you say like, hey, this is what happened, maybe we could have done things differently, that disarms a lot of the anger that patients or families have, patients have. And I think it ultimately leads to like less legal pursuits from family and patients. If you just admit, because, doctors, we don't want to admit we're wrong, but if you do, that goes a long way. And actually touching the patient, not necessarily with the, the physical exam, but hand on the shoulder. Hey, I understand where you're coming from, goes a long way.
Yep. I was ready to go after them, because I was in that moment of hurt. I'm sure, Alex, you were even saying about your dad. And even though someone did jump in, it still bothered you afterwards. And you were ready. Well, do I file a complaint against this original doctor? What do I do?
We were thinking that for the longest time. And I think through like therapy and just even writing this article about it, like it just really like put me at peace. I'm not speaking for my sisters or my mom, because I know my mom is still hurting some years later, but we all remember the physician who really, like, I remember his name and everything. I'm like, do I email him, sending him an email or something? But I remember the one who just really came to bat for my family. So there are good ones out there.
Yeah, no, there are good ones. And sometimes I don't like doing shows like this, just because I don't like even the mainstream, we had articles from New York Times and ProPublica that came out there, and because of a few bad seeds, suddenly they want to create all these sweeping changes across, and suddenly every single doctor who's in this practice or doing, one thing, it suddenly becomes the stereotype that suddenly
Yes.
every doctor's doing things wrong, and suddenly every hospital's making the wrong decisions. But it's not the case. I really believe in my heart of hearts, and John, you would agree, like all those doctors that are Viva, that we were just at a conference last week in Las Vegas called Viva, and you had doctors from different practices that were there, different philosophies, different tools, different techniques across the board, but they were all coming together because they're passionate about the patient. I mean, it gives me so much hope in going to these types of conferences where I see not only the passion, but the compassion. When I go in there, and I have worked with doctors throughout the year remotely and sending patients their way, and I show up there and they give me a hug and ask me how Alan's doing or Douglas is doing or Marcia is doing. And I'm like, wow, you remember these people. You remember these human beings. They're more than patients. They're people. It means so much to me. And you see their passion on the podium, right? And the feeling of reward, right, Dr. John, when you're able to cross something and that no one else has been able to cross, and go that extra mile that no one has been able to go in your field, and you not only did it yourself, but you're able to not only inspire others to do the same, but you're able to teach them to do the same. That's huge.
It is, and I think we as docs, or at least I do, I appreciate it when a patient is thankful, because it forces me to think about what it is that we are doing, not necessarily just me, but we are doing, and that it truly means something to them, as opposed to, because I used to say, it's just my job, that's just what my job. But for some it is a job, but others it's a true like vocation and a calling. And that's, like we talked about, is it shifting towards just a job, just shift work? And are we going to lose this compassion and empathy? But hopefully with people like Alexa out there continuing to, because it is a trickle down effect. And if you have a health system or hospital that is very pro, like EQ, or what is it, the emotional quotient or whatever, like really into that, I think they're going to do much better and create an environment where everyone is empathetic and, just working towards the common good, which is helping people.
Yeah. And Heinz, go ahead and unmute.
How do you separate empathy from sympathy?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a doctor, as a doctor, Dr. Phillips, I'm sure you have some sympathy, but you can't really get too close to a patient, one over another. You have to separate a little bit from that. Empathy, from what I gathered from the show, was more so about listening better to the patient's side of the story, what they're getting to. So how do you separate those two?
I mean, I try not to have, again, you have sympathy for a family member who's lost a loved one. I have that. And then I try to have empathy for the patient, and again, just put myself in their shoes. But it's very difficult because you don't want to be like pedantic or just like, it's a fine line, because I don't want them to think that I'm feeling sorry for them, or they're like, you have no idea what I'm going through. I remember a patient that he was having a STEMI, so a heart attack. Like, he was sick. He was trying to die, and he had a wristband on his. So we go in through the artery in the wrist. He had a wristband on, and it was something that we had to cut off, and to get access to his wrist. So we cut it off, and I asked him about it, and we saved his life. And he was sick. This was during COVID, actually, too. And I asked him about it. I said, what was that wristband? He's like, oh, it was actually something for my son. My son was murdered as an Ohio State student And I thought, oh my God, this guy's lost his son. He almost died. And he was just very do what you got to do kind of mentality. And I thought, oh, that was just a bizarre situation in my mind. And it was hard to wrap my head around it. But ever since then, I've kind of been, man, there's a lot going on with these people, and I can't pretend to understand what they're going through and what got them to there. It's kind of like the same thing when someone honks and flips you off in the car. You're like, okay, I'm not sure what's going on with you, but I'm gonna let it go type deal. Because somebody might just be having a really bad day, and you might be judging them like Alexa told us not to do.
All right, Alexa. We're all going to say, but Alexa says.
Alexa,
And we're not
yeah,
talking
like,
about Amazon Alexa. We're going to be like, this Alexa
Human
says.
Alexa.
The human Alexa on empathy.
Oh my gosh.
But
crazy.
I'm curious your thoughts on sympathy versus empathy. This is a really interesting discussion because it's so easy. I don't think that it benefits anyone to feel sorry for them.
No,
I just don't, right?
I don't think it benefits anyone. And it's funny because like very similar to what like John was saying, like empathy and sympathy are different. I view empathy as being, it's like showing that you are compassionate and understanding of their emotional experiences. Sympathy, and it's gonna sound so bad, but sympathy is like, oh, I have pity for you, or like I feel concern over you, and like over someone's situation. And so those aren't the same things. And so you want to avoid with the sympathy because like what John was saying, like you don't know what someone's going through. You could be like, you don't know like how they really are feeling in that moment, like if they flip you off or something when they're driving. So so there's those are just like the differences of it. And I had mentioned before that empathy is really complex for like what people think it is.
And empathy, I think from what I'm hearing you saying, empathy is empowering, sympathy is disempowering.
Yeah, that's a good simple way.
Yeah.
And the difference being is that in sympathy, there's this separation, there's this wall up. I feel like I feel sorry for you and not worth even, giving you the time of day versus empathy is saying, oh, wow, you have this going on. And I am going to take a moment and express an understanding that you are going through something.
Like an example that I've shared with people is, so this can, because there's different types of empathy. There's like cognitive, compassionate, and emotional. So let's say you see someone like take a huge fall. So the way that you act when you see someone fall, you like cringe or you react. So that is you being emotionally empathetic. And then you being compassionate, empathetic is when you see them fall, you're going to, what are you going to do? You'll usually help them or you'll call someone for help. So those are different types of empathy versus like sympathy. It's like, oh, sorry, you fell. That's like an extreme example, but I'm oversimplifying it. But
could empathy, sympathy be something thought of as negative that could drag a person down? Like as a doctor, if you show sympathy, it could drag you down versus empathy is more upbeat.
Yeah, that's a good simplification of it. Because empathy isn't always going to be upbeat. It's like if you're delivering really sad news to someone, like that's obviously not upbeat, but I understand where you're going with that.
Yeah. Is it intention? So maybe the key is that intention. That could be the difference.
Yes.
As well.
I like how Joshua put in the chat, empathy equals action.
Yes.
I just noticed that. Yes.
That's a good way to put it.
That is a good way to put it. Yeah.
I love that. I just had this situation, but I'm wondering, I kind of want a little guidance from Dr. John because, and from you, Alex, on this, because I had a situation yesterday, and I had a couple of our friends in the group who are also patients in our network that helped to counsel me on this, because I feel guilty. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't always make them drink. And it's like, where does that fall into the whole realm? Because I had a patient and I keep leading this person, leading this person, leading this person. This person's on deck for bilateral above knee amputations. And every single time I'm stepping in to help, this person doesn't follow through. I don't get the call that they need help. They end up going to the other doctor and the other doctor and the other doctor who's doing this procedure and that procedure and that procedure. They're not advanced skilled, and we know this, and they know this, but it's continuing to lead them down this rabbit hole towards amputation, which can be prevented with the right philosophy, right doctor, right tools, right techniques. Finally, I get the call that this person is ready for the help. I create the situation to get the help, lure in this doctor to say, hey, can you pull some strings and get this person in and try to save their legs? The doctor goes out of the way, expedites it, offers the patient the appointment the next day. The patient says, oh, no, I got this and that going on. I'll come in next week. Then the next week comes around. Well, I've offered a ride to get this person there. The person never calls me. I guess something failed, and they ended up canceling that appointment. I ended up making an appointment for a week later. I get the call yesterday that this person's ride failed, and was like, well, I guess I'll just have to reschedule it for next week. I was like, wait, hold on. I messaged the doctor, was like, can you wait for this person? Let's get going. And several $100s later for a cab ride. Like I stopped everything. I was at a dog show to honor my mom, but I stopped everything, went outside and missed the ceremony, was calling all over the place for cab rides. And this person was not ready when the cab arrived. So it took an extra 10 minutes. Time was of the essence before it closed. Get the person there. The team is waiting for this person upstairs, but the person walks up to security, says, where do we need to go? And this security guard said, oh, I think they're closed and whatever. Didn't bother to call me right then and there to let me know that that's what's going on. Went back out to the cab that I'm paying on the meter, right, to wait, and just got in the car, and the cab person calls me and says, this is really weird. They're in the car now, but I said, let's call you and see if I should just take you home, or if you have something else you need them to do. And I was like, why did you not tell the security guard to call up there, that they were waiting for you? Or why didn't you call me while you were standing there, versus leaving the building, going all the way back out to the cab? So it was several $100s for nothing. It was like, I can only fight so hard, and I'm so empathetic. And I'm like, I don't know where I stand at this point. How should I feel? How should I act? How do I come from a place of understanding in these moments? What do I do next? Do I continue the fight? Do I lose empathy? Do I lose understanding? Do I lose anything and just saying, you know what? I can't do anymore.
But it will become toxic for you at some point. Yeah. And for me, I always tell patients, like, I will fight for you as long as you want to fight for yourself. If you don't fight for yourself, then, and I've said it before, the coach quarterback analogy. I'm your coach, you're the quarterback. You've got to execute the plays and get the ball across the goal line. I can't do that for you. I'll help you. And it's the same thing when you're sitting next to a couple where, simple thing like tobacco cessation. Mr. Smith, you need to quit smoking. Mrs. Smith nodding her head, yes. Mr. Smith's like, Mrs. Smith, what should I do? I say, listen, you do what you can. You can't make him quit. Yeah. And you can't, it's not a referendum on you or your inability to convince somebody. You did the best you could, and then that's it. And move on. Because Kim, there's somebody else that needs your the passion and needs your energy. You're wasting energy on that person, in my opinion, and pivot to somebody who actually could benefit from it.
Yeah. But where do you fall then perception wise? I mean, am I no longer empathetic?
The fact that you
Am I
were-
just a
that
mean
you-
person at
No,
that
I
point?
mean,
You're not a mean
for-
person.
yeah, for God's sakes, you walked out of a
For giving up?
concert, like that's, taking time out of something that's important for you, line this whole thing up evidently to no avail. I mean, like, what more can you do besides you physically picking this person up, taking them there? I mean, gosh, you went above and beyond the call. I don't know anybody else that would frankly do that, honestly.
You're not a mean person. You just hopping off of what John was saying, like you can only do so much. And at the end of the day, it is up to that patient to take the right steps, like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Like Mrs. Smith can really want to help Mr. Smith, but it's Mr. Smith's decision as well. And if he's not willing to cooperate, or if they're not willing to cooperate with you, you really just, it's a hard thing to just like walk away and let go. I understand where you're coming from with that. It's really hard to let go of those things because you do want what's best for your patients also. And so, but at the end of the day, like if they don't follow up with certain things, if they don't want to do it, then that's on them and not you.
Indeed.
And Colin wants to jump in and share his thoughts.
Hey everyone, it's nice to hear y'all. I don't get to do this too often. So I was
You make me
listening in the
smile.
background, finishing some stuff with the editing, and going off of both the examples that Kim gave and also that Dr. John gave, and also being in my own space and doing this job. What I've learned more than anything is, one, if it can be messed up, people will find a way to mess it up. That's just life. Two, when you're trying to help someone or give direction to someone, you don't give it plainly so that it's easier for you to understand. You give it plainly and state it basically step by step so that you can see how much effort someone wants to put into it, because it's at some point, right? There's a basis for any and everything you do. I can tell you till I'm blue in the face that drinking water with mud in it probably is gonna hurt you. But if you can't even get the basis that dirty water can hurt you, I can't help you with that anymore. So when you go and you're talking with people or you're helping people or you're doing anything that has to deal with interactions with someone, you have to just give them a level of, hey, I don't think you don't understand this. I'm not even saying you don't understand it. I'm saying it plainly like this so that if it comes up or something happens to where it comes awry and you can't do this basics, you need to understand that you will not get this help that you're looking for. And this is not a knock on you. I think you're great. I'm willing to go above and beyond. But if I can't even get you the basics of doing 2 steps forward, you're just going to slide 50 steps backwards. So that's my 2 cents.
I love that. Alexa, do you want to comment?
No, like Colin, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, that just like solidifies what I think what I was saying, what John was saying. Like you do need to sometimes take a step back and explain things at the simplest level for people to understand it. But then if that still doesn't go through, then you did what you could.
Yeah, but then do you shift then? I feel like I then shift from empathy to sympathy. And I don't want to, but it's like I can't help in that moment. Well, one, I go through, and John knows me very, very well, that I kick myself and I figure out where did I go wrong in this whole process. I hold myself accountable for everybody else. But
And you
I don't make,
shouldn't. You
I know,
shouldn't.
right?
Yeah.
But I don't make room for them holding themselves accountable
Yeah.
for their own lives and what they create, right? And I feel like I move into that sympathy thing where, God, I feel sorry for them. Like, I do understand that everyone has other priorities, but I still feel so bad that they can't see the light and I feel bad that I can't make them see the light, and I put it on myself. And I'm starting to learn this, and it's great that I have amazing mentors and advisors And now I'm adding you to my click here because you're taking my emotional support. But having Dr. John and having these other doctors that experience this and have to that I respect so much, that I know they exude empathy. I know that they're there, and I know that they're communicating and connecting with their patients, and I know they're doing their darndest, but they are experiencing this every day and having to. I just started having to make these decisions like in 2016. They've been doing this a lot longer and have more practice, having to say, I need to draw the line. You're not going to stop smoking. You're not going to stop doing these things that you're doing. And I can have empathy for you, but by that same token, do you cross over, Dr. John, into that sympathy thing where you're like, God, I can't help but feel sorry for you, that I know you're going to, you won't quit smoking. I know what it's going to do for you. I know you know what it's going to do for you. And I feel really bad. You can't quit. You won't quit. You won't take those steps. You won't walk. You won't get up out of your chair to move, to improve your own circulation. Am I making sense? Or am I just talking in circles?
No, you're not going in circles. You're making a lot of sense. How would I
got a
describe
guilty
this
conscience.
for everyone to hear? The way you feel and the emphasis that you feel is what I like to call, and this is not my own terminology. If you want to write a book to it, I'd love it. But it's what I call names versus groups. And the idea behind that is when you care for people, or when anyone cares for folks in general, they generally care for the person. So it tends to be more intimate, whether it's name bases or connections, whatever the case is. They know that person on the individual. When you start to detract yourself from someone, or you start to move yourself away to where you can wish them the best, but maybe somewhere else, they start to become a group. They start to become people, because you can't control people. You can only do so much, but people are going to do or move the way they want to. So in your case, and what you're feeling in that institute, like we're going to school, in that situation, you are having more of a sense of, okay, I'm trying to see this person, I'm trying to help this person, but you're draining me so much that you're becoming part of a crowd to where I can only look at y'all and say, I hope you the best. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I want to be active and do and be there for you, but you're putting yourself in this grouping, this space.
Yeah. We'll give final thoughts to Dr. John. I'm curious.
It's a pretty
Thank you,
heavy.
Colin.
This is, I mean, it's a heavy conversation.
Yeah.
I think that we all can take what we've learned here, digest it a little bit, and just make a small change this week, and that'll build. So I appreciate Alexa, Kim, everybody. Good show. Good show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
And
having me.
Alexa, final thoughts, final takeaways.
I guess just like I started, empathy is a hard one, and it can be learned, and it needs to be practiced day in, day out so you can get better at it. So just use it, not even in the work environment, just use it to strengthen your relationships through communication, and use it to help with problem solving, because it makes you think in an innovative way. And yeah, just be a little bit more empathetic, because you don't know what someone else might